Hello, this is Erica with the Purple Quilt Company. Thank you so much for tuning into my channel. Today's video is a roundup of all of the completed projects that I did for 2024. So if you want to get a good look at those, please stay tuned. It's been a really fun year for making quilts, so I'm so excited to share with you the completions that I had. In this video, there are a few completed quilts. There are some projects that are not quilted, and then there's some kind of partials. If there is a UFO, I will point that out as we go through the quilts. Many of the quilts have already been either gifted or they were commissioned, so I don't have them. I will, however, show you what I have, and I'll show you pictures of the parts that I don't have. So let's get started. I'm going to move the camera. We're actually upstairs today, and I have the quilts laid out on the floor. So we're going to start in here, and then we'll just keep the video rolling and insert pictures where we need to. So let's move the camera and get this thing started. Here is the first quilt that I finished in 2024. It's actually a carryover from 2023. And I really love this one because I finished it on the long arm. And I think this was either the second or third quilt that I completed on the long arm. I ended up calling it the olive branch quilt. It is a Bargello. I'm not sure how well you can see me in the video, but that's not super important. But this quilt actually started with a Moda scrap bag, and I created the center panels here, the center Bargello pieces with that Moda scrap bag. Hopefully I can remember to link the videos for this quilt. If you want to search it, I called it Baby Bargello. So this is the original part of the quilt, and then I went to the fabric store and fleshed it out to make it a big quilt size. It turned out really great. I'm not sure of the size, but it almost fits my queen size bed. So like it fits on the top of it, but there's none left over. So it's probably a full size quilt. I don't have the exact measurements. I didn't write them down at this point. So I used a pantograph to quilt it, and I think I turned it long ways across the quilt to get it quilted. The pantograph is called Dainty, and it's like a little flower with some leaves. It's pretty cute, and it just turned out really great. Really great. I did go ahead and put a sleeve on the back of this one, and it's going to hopefully I will enter it in the Georgia National Fair next year. I'm not sure yet. I know that there's some tension issues on the back, but I really like how this quilt turned out, and so I may go ahead and enter it anyway. Just a quick peek at the back of this one, so you can see the backing, and I'm pretty sure that this was a 108 backing that I used to finish it out, but really nice. I love the way that this one turned out. The next few pieces are not, I don't have them because I gave them away. Let me see. Can you see me? I don't know. But the next one I will put here. This was a quilt repair that I did that was for that purple Lone Star quilt. I'm going to put some pictures in here. Pictures in here so that you can see the quilt. I was really nervous about getting it started and working on that quilt, but I actually surprised myself with how well, hopefully, I was able to complete it. There were some repairs that needed to be made on the front of the quilt or the top of the quilt and on the backing, and the person was very happy with the repairs that I did. So that turned out really great. The next three quilts were, one of them was a gift, and the other two were commissions. But let's talk about the gift quilt first. This was I'll put a picture here. put a picture here and maybe over the whole screen so that you can see it. The butterfly garden quilt, and I used some applique butterfly blocks that were given to me a long time ago, several years ago, and I put them into a quilt and surrounded it with some floral fabric. I really love the way that this quilt turned out. It was super, super, super cute. I'll put a picture here of the front, and hopefully I'll have a picture of the back that I can put in as well. I don't remember the quilting pattern that I used. I'm pretty sure I quilted it on the long arm, but I don't remember the pattern. But I'll go through and I'll show it to you so that you can check that out. But it was such a nice quilt. Maybe I can put a little bit of video about that quilt in here as well so that you can see what it ended up looking like. But I love that quilt. So that was in February. So the olive branch, this quilt here, and the quilt repair were in January. I finished up the butterfly garden quilt in February. So really fun quilt. And since it was baby size, it did not take a long time to put together. And basically the blocks were already done. But it was pretty fun. And I'll link any information about that quilt in the description box so that you can go check it out. I think I also used a butterfly quilt block in there as well. So you'll get to see that too in the description box. The next quilt that I'm going to show is a memory quilt commission that I got. I finished it in March, and this commission had skirts and jackets and t-shirts that went into the quilt. I was inspired by Fabric Cafe's time machine pattern. So I'll put a picture of that quilt here, maybe a snippet of the video, we'll see. And I really enjoyed putting this quilt together. It was super simple, even though there was a lot of fabric that needed to be pressed and interfaced and all that. The quilt still came together nicely, and I really love that that inspiration with a solid square and then an hourglass. I think it worked out perfectly in the quilt, and they really loved it. So I'm happy about that. It turned out great. So hopefully here in the video, you'll see little snippets of that quilt. I really am happy with it, and I was proud that I could do it. Next, in the beginning of May, I finished the rainbow trip around the world. If you follow my channel, you know how much I loved putting that quilt top together. It was so much fun digging through my scraps, pulling different fabrics out to get the color combination that I wanted. And the trip around the world, it looks so complicated, but the fact that it's so simple to put together makes it worth doing every single time. And even like now, I think this will be that's the second trip around the world that I've created. And I would love to make another one. I'm still thinking about what might be the next one, but I'm not sure yet. I have no idea. But here's some information about that quilt. It was a lot of fun to make, as I already said. And of course, they loved it. It came together well. And I was able to quilt both of these, actually all these quilts on the long arm. And to me, that makes the quilting so much faster. So I think that's why I was able to get so many completions done this year, because I had the long arm and just a little bit more experience to get some more quilts done on it. The next project that I'm going to show, it's not a quilt, but I took the pieces of lace and a dress from a wedding and created some pocket squares, or created a pocket square and a handkerchief for one of my coworkers. That turned out great. I was nervous about how to do that without destroying fabric and stuff, but I got some good advice from some of you guys, and it worked out really well. I'll put pictures of that here in the video. I made a pocket square for the groom who was getting married, and then for his mom, I made a handkerchief out of the fabric and some more of that lace, and it really turned out great. Glad I could experience that. So, and that was in May. So I finished the trip around the world on May the 1st, and then I put these pocket squares together on May the 2nd. Later on in the month, I finished up the Rich Heritage quilt. This is one of my favorites. So I'm going to pull this one down here. And those of you who have followed my channel, you know all about this quilt, but I will link the other, I'll link some videos to it in the description box. So of course, if you have not seen it, you definitely can go check this out. These are some African fabrics, 2.5 strips, 2.5-inch strips that I got from a friend when I was in a quilt guild. And she gave me all of these fabric strips, and I stitched them all together and created some coin blocks out of them, or some coins out of them. And then I sashed it with this deep purple fabric. It turned out really great. There are 2 parts for this quilt top. One part where I just made the coins or these strip sets, and then the other part where I chose the sashing. So both of those videos are in my YouTube, so you can search those out. I called it the African Coin Quilt, and I love this quilt top. And so I decided that I would use the leftovers from this top to make the backing of the fabric. And then you can see the binding is the same as the sashing on this one, because I had so much of this purple fabric and I just really love it. So here's the back. And for the back, I just did, I took the leftover pieces and I framed them out. So you can see all of those here. And then I kind of put them together like a puzzle. And I think that this was one of my, I think in the summer of 2023, this was one of my big projects. So, but I'm not sure. I think I did it for like Vlogmas in July, maybe in 2023. So it came together pretty nicely. The back, of course, was bigger than the top, but once I quilted it, I was able to cut everything down, and it turned out really nice. The quilting pattern that I used for this one is the African Samba pattern, and it was my first time using this pattern on a quilt. Well, maybe it might be the second time. I may have used it on the Rich Heritage quilt. I'm not sure. But if you know, it may already be on the video, so you'll see it. But this one is really nice. I love this quilt so much. And I love the colors and all that. I am considering entering this one into the Georgia National Fair next year. The reason that I'm hesitant is because I know that there's some tension issues. Even though I love the way the quilt looks, I know that there's some tension issues, and they'll get me on the in the judging. But I love just the way it looks. If I decide to enter it, I will have to put a sleeve on it, and the sleeve will probably be in this purple fabric, because believe it or not, I still have some of this. So we'll see. But I love both sides of this quilt. I love that I was able to improv piece the back, and that I was able to use these these strips on the front to create these coins. And I named it the Rich Heritage Quilt because I am a 4th generation quilter. So quilting is a part of my heritage. And these coins are like rich because there are a lot of coins on here. So this is the Rich Heritage Quilt. I love how it turned out. For my next one, and again, I finished this one in May of this year. So let's see. Let me see where I am on my list here. Okay, the next one, this was like just a small project that I've had for a while, and I just didn't finish it. I hadn't stitched the back of this, like I hadn't hand stitched the binding on. So it only took like a day or two just to finish hand stitching the binding on. This is a wall hanging that I got the pattern from the Block a Day book. And if you follow my channel, you know how much I've been using the Block a Day book. But this was just a random block that I've made from that book. It's called Goose Tracks. And I added a border around it. And then I used the same fabric for the binding and for the backing. And this one actually has 2 little sleeves so that I could put it on a dowel if I wanted to, but I just have not yet. But this was again in May of this year, just finishing this up. It took like I said, a really short time because I just had to finish stitching the binding on by hand, but really cute. Okay, so let's see what's next here. The next quilt is the Scrappy Bricks quilt. I will have to put some video from that quilt in, or the or pictures, because I don't have that quilt. That quilt was gifted. It was I called it legacy build because of the backing fabric, which was the classic cars, and then the quilting was 4-wheelers. So that quilt was gifted to my fiance's grandson. I think he just turned 2, but I made that quilt and gifted it to him. And it's called Legacy Build because both his granddad and his dad are into cars and 4-wheelers and working with their hands as I just call them car people, not like mechanics, even though they can do that kind of work, but they just love working with cars and rebuilding cars and stuff like that. So that's the Legacy Build quilt. I'll put some information about that quilt here. The pattern, Scrappy Bricks, very simple, fun to sew, and it could use up a lot of scraps if you chose to. I think I ended up using several of my fabrics just because I had them in the stash and I picked the colorway and I was able to go with that. So a lot of fun. And I finished that one at the beginning of June. Beginning of June. I also had some a bear order. So I'll put a picture of those bears here that I also finished up in June this year. There were 2 bears that I finished up for a coworker and her mother. So they'll be here. They'll be here in the video. And then the next quilt that I finished, I still have it, and I should not have it because it belongs to my little sister, and so I need to get it to her. This was it's her graduation quilt, and so I still have it. Like I said, I finished it in June, and I just have not been back to South Georgia to give it to her. So I may just have to mail it because it's ridiculous that I have it. Oh, let me scoot out of the way. This is the Type It pattern, and I used 2.5-inch strips, all from my stash. I did not purchase any fabric for this quilt, and even the backing the backing I purchased separately, but it wasn't for this quilt. I just used it on this quilt, and I have the binding is also from my stash. I used leftover pieces from the quilt for the binding. It looks really great. If you will remember, I made some mistakes on this quilt because I was trying to transfer some of the writing to different parts of the quilt, and it did not work out. So what I ended up doing was creating these patches with her first initial and her middle initial and just stitching them on, and it looks really good. I use the Alternating Baptist Fan quilt pattern, which is really one of my favorite patterns to use. And it turned out good. The only thing, I want to remake this pattern, but this time when I made it, I had some warping because I didn't stitch correctly. I did not alternate my the direction of my stitching, and so I want to remake it just to see if I can correct that. Not necessarily in these colors. My colors are typically blues and greens. But I don't know. I'm going to look and see what I have in my stash if I decide to remake it. I haven't made a final decision, but I loved making this quilt. It was really easy, and the pattern is very accessible. It's just that these long seams, I should have sewn them alternating instead of sewing them all in the same direction. But live and learn. But I love this quilt. I love how it came out. I think that she's going to love it whenever I finally get it to her. So that'll be on the list of things to do for 2025, hopefully soon. Let's see what else. And I finished this one at the end of June. And the next 3 quilts I don't have anymore because they have been gifted. And one of them is a UFO. So let's see. So far, the UFOs that I have done are the olive branch quilt. That was a UFO. And then from 2023, or from before 2023, I think, but it was a UFO. And then the coin quilt was a UFO. And the Scrappy Bricks quilt was a UFO. I had just started it in 2023, but it came into 2024 as a UFO. Also, the wall hanging was something that was left over from previous years. So the next one is this one I really enjoyed, and I worked on it during the summer. Didn't really finish it until September, but I think it was my main summer project quilt, and that was the Starlight Star Bright quilt. That one I took several blocks, or all of the blocks that I had done from my Starlight Star Bright quilt along. I don't even remember when, maybe 2021 Vlogmas or something, or like, I don't know. But there is a playlist for the Starlight Star Bright quilt. I'll link that in the description. But I decided to finish those out and make it a big quilt. It turned out to be a huge quilt for my nephew. And so it is, but it is finally complete. I ended up having to make more blocks for it, but it turned out really great. So I'll put some, I guess I'll put some pictures in here of the Starlight Star Bright quilt. I'm so happy with how it turned out, and he loved it, which was really important. So I was glad that I was able to use those blocks to complete that quilt. Next two are, the first one is a commission, is that jersey quilt that I made, and it was baby sized. And so if you follow my channel, you know the that quilt and the struggles that I had. Not really struggles, but the fact that after I washed it, we lost some of the detail on the jerseys, and I was so upset about that. And but they still loved it. They still it was no harm done because those jerseys had been stored for so long. And so, but I just need to be careful for the next time I make a quilt like that. But it was still fun to put together. I loved how it turned out, especially before I washed it. But like I said, everything turned out good. I'll put pictures here of that quilt. And I think for that one, I did put Minky on the back, and that was my first experience with Minky. It was my second experience using something besides cotton on the back, but it was my first experience with the Minky. So it turned out pretty good. I'm happy with it overall, and I'm proud of it. It's just that I wish that that we hadn't lost some of the detail after washing them. After washing the quilt. That was in October. So the next two, these last two, I don't have the first one, but I loved it so much. I did not want to give it away, but my mom reminded me that I had to give it away because it was made to be given away. And that's the Giant Jacob's Ladder quilt. I'll just put the pictures here because that's a pretty recent finish. I just finished it on the 15th. So those videos are pretty close to the top of my search, or of my YouTube watch list. So hopefully you'll get to check those out. Put the pictures here. So cute. It actually ended up being a double-sided quilt, or reversible quilt, because I did the Jacob's Ladder block on the front and then a sort of brick style square on the back. So just a really adorable, fun quilt. And that is one that was so simple to make that I would be tempted to make another one. I have not decided that yet because I have so many other projects in the works that I need to do. But it was so cute, and they loved it when I gave it away. Loved it when I gave it away. All right, and then the last one that I have is right here. And I didn't think that I would have it for the video today, but I do. And I'll put a little bit of video in maybe about this quilt. This is the community quilt. It is completely finished, bound and everything. And so this will be my last finish of 2024 as far as quilts go. This is the community quilt. It is done. I'm very excited about it. It was created at our car show for the church, and now it is completely pieced and quilted. So let's go through it. I've already kind of gone through it a little bit, but the main thing is this binding. I wanted to, I made this binding when I thought that I was going to put a gray backing on the quilt, and you can see it's just a variety of grays from light to dark, but the bag ended up being black, and I was thinking that I should do a black binding, but this one was already created. It was already made, so I just said, let's put it on here. It is so cute. I think it suits the quilt nicely, and it's really interesting that it's kind of halfway the lighter gray and then about halfway the darker gray. I think it's perfect for this quilt. I did use the meander stitch. At this point, the quilt has been washed, and so it shrunk a little bit. It has a little bit of a crinkle. The quilting is kind of big, so I didn't get a lot of crinkle, but I think it's good. It softened it up nicely too. So really nice. You can see about how big the quilting is. And as I was quilting this, I was a little bit concerned about some of the shapes that I was quilting. I didn't like them, but I knew once everything was together, it would be fine. But it's really turned out great. My hope is that we'll be able to present this to its recipient very soon. It is so cute. I'm really happy with how it turned out. We'll look at the back for a second, but I've already shown that. Again, it is those car fabrics. And of course, some of this got cut off because of the because it was bigger than the quilt top, but really cute. And I think it's going to be just perfect. So excited to have this one. I really wanted to get this one finished before the end of the year. So I'm so happy that I was able to do that. And I'm grateful for the person who donated the fabric and for everybody who contributed. Such a great project. And so these are the blocks that we made at our church car show. I sashed it and I gave it a stop border here. And then I sort of improv pieced the piano keyboarder. I used the cutoffs from these blocks to start, and then I filled in all of the other pieces with the larger remnants from the from these fabrics. So I don't really have anything left over from this except for crumbs. The fabric was, most of the fabric was donated. Some of the fabric that was not donated was the 5-inch squares. So some of these smaller squares, I just took my whole 5-inch square stash, and so people got to pick from those. But most of the fabrics were donated. So even that part is not my fabric. And then this border or this binding was from the donated fabric. It is gray. And then the backing was my fabric, and it's these classic cars. And but I think that since the quilt was made at the car show, this is appropriate for the back of the quilt. So a lot of fun. I love this quilt. Again, I think it means something when I do not want to give the quilts away. Like, I'm extra proud of them and I really love them. And so that is cool. But I have to talk to my chief quilting officer, and she usually sets me straight on that. and reminds me that some of these quilts were made to be given away and that I need to give them away. Okay, so I think that I had a pretty productive 2024 in the quilt room, the sewing room. I'm looking forward to 2025. I'm currently in the process of pulling everything together to see what I want to accomplish. I really would love to do more UFOs for 2025, but I do have at least 3 important projects that I'll tell you about in another video. So I'm really excited. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions about this video, please leave them in the comments. So these are my stats for my finishes for this year. As I already said, there were 4 UFO quilts, and I've already gone through those. The one additional UFO was the Goose Tracks wall hanging. I had 3 miscellaneous commissions. So I had the quilt repair, I had the bears, and the pocket squares, and those were just kind of miscellaneous things, not quilt related, or not quilty, not quilts. And then I completed 6 new quilts from start to finish this year. What I do like is that a lot of these were not full-size quilts, but I was still able to get them completed. Even the big quilts were, whether they were commissions or something like this, being able to complete them start to finish in usually just a few months, or a month or less, was pretty rewarding. And it sort of propels me into 2025 because I know that I can be productive. I can get a lot done, and I just have to use the time to actually and make a plan to see how we're going to do this thing. But so fun. I'm, like I said, really looking forward to 2025. Let me know in the comments what you're excited about. If you have a big goal, quilt related or not quilt related, it would be amazing. We can support each other in whatever we decide to do. As I said before, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Thumbs up this video, share it with your friends, subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for your support in 2024. It has been amazing. We are at over 11,000 subscribers, which is so awesome. And I hope that we can continue to grow the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.